Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Abington School Committee meeting. Tonight is Thursday, March 11th, 2021. Tonight and moving forward, we are going to salute our flag and recite the Pledge of Allegiance during our Zoom meetings. We want to apologize that we haven't done it before. We didn't know it was an option. So if everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Peter so that he can address our full reopening plan.
Thank you. A couple of things before I begin, and Rich is going to put up a PowerPoint for us. I want to make sure that I do a good job of covering this thoughtfully and slowly enough for people to at least initially absorb this information. This team, members of this team have been digesting all of this for weeks and weeks. And I could very easily not have enough of a sense that people are absorbing this for the first time, that I need to do this very thoughtfully. And so along the way, if there are members of the team that say, hey, Peter, could you clarify that for people? Could you highlight this or that, or there are questions that people want to ask? I really welcome that because for our members of the community and that are tuned in, this is their first read. I also want to start by saying, there are really two goals here. The first one is safety, and the second one is having a meaningful experience for all the kids we serve. And with the restrictions that we have in place, what we've tried to do is put together the best plan that we have, and we'll go through that. And we're also available tonight. People aren't really, it's not a public forum type of session, but I want to say this about that. I'll say it at the end also. Throughout this experience we've all had, we've been easy to find. We have continually almost, a live response time with people's questions. And we will continue to honor that because that's what people should have, and that's what they're owed. That's what we want to give to people. Just as recently as tonight, I received a message from one of our high school students with some concerns. We'll be addressing those hopefully through the presentation and I'll be following up with that like we do with everyone who asks us questions. I'm also going to talk a little bit about surveys and input and things like that at the end of this presentation. Because I really want to leave no stone uncovered as we begin this really comprehensive, thoughtful rollout. Please understand there is so much information here that we want to have those conversations. We welcome those in the weeks to come as we talk about the full person return to school. So if I don't know if people can see the slide presentation yet, or if they've been stuck looking at me. Great.
Wendy's asking a question. I think she's muted, Peter. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can I just ask, please, because it's kind of blowing up on Facebook a little bit. People are saying that they, if they're calling in and they don't have cable, then they can't see the presentation.
Oh.
So I just want to be clear that if you go on to the abington.cam website, you should be able to watch the meeting. Is that correct? I've said that, but okay. Thank you. And I'm on here now. I can see it. So if anyone else wants to do that, those are your options. We appreciate it. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No.
It's not on Abington Cam.
Yeah, and thank you for stopping us so people have the opportunity to do that. And if for some reason you still miss it, it will be available to people. This is just the beginning of information to come.
Correct. Thank you.
So right now, people should be able to access this PowerPoint presentation from the Abington Cam website. Maybe we could give that website address one more time. Thank you for the help. So if I could really begin with the next slide. We're going to talk about safety throughout this because safety continues to be paramount. Important to note, as a result of the efforts around safety that have occurred with the team we have in Abington, the faculty, staff, and the administration, and across the country, schools have not been the source of COVID-19 spread in Abington or elsewhere. There is enough data on that in Abington locally and across the country that is an established fact. Another fact is that the infection rate, as you know, from watching the news, is down, and that the vaccination rates will continue to go up and accelerate as more vaccines become available. Rich, on to the next one. Thanks. So throughout this presentation, really one of the underpinnings is the social distancing. It's driven a lot of the decisions that have been made for those two goals that we have, safety and meaningful engagement. It's been a part of that. I'll talk about other safety measures, which you know, but important for people to recognize is that classrooms will be organized to provide a 6-foot distance for the teacher area or the desk area. But then the student desks are arranged 3 feet apart across the district. And that's the minimum. Some might be more than that. Most, I'm going to tell you, for full disclosure, are at this 3 foot between students, with the 6-foot area in generally in the front of the room for the teachers. Different is lunch, snack, and mask breaks. Those are going to be at 6 feet. Ready, Rich? So these are the proposed dates for return. And these are the dates that I think most of the people that are watching this is the slide that people are likely most interested in. I know the other ones are important also. For our students pre-K to 8, the return date would be April 5th. And for the students grades 9 to 12, the return date would be April 12th. The reason for this is because this staggering between these two dates at 201 Glenowitz, where we've got our early education program, in our middle school and our high school, we have well over, we've got between well over 1,200 people on that site. And the movement that's going to occur as more and more people are driving their students to school with the buses, with those different start and end times. I just wanted to give people a heads up. Traffic is going to be heavy, and we don't want people to stress about that. We want people to know about that. I want you to please plan for that. It's going to be difficult, especially at that building, to get in and out of there. So this first week gives a chance for the grades for the pre-K and the 5-8 that are also housed on that campus. Parents will begin to tell their students where they're going to meet them, where the drop-off is. Things will begin to move better after that week. Also, though, we've got all new bus routes that we're going to have to put together. And the food service program to feed 1,200 people in one day during a pandemic, hopefully you can imagine is going to be a challenge. Just in the increased cleaning of surfaces because of the people taking off their masks and eating, and the responsibility we have to safety. We need that gap in return to logistically square those things away the right way. Can I have the next slide, please?
Mr. Schaefer, I actually have a question about lunch. So, if I can.
Yeah.
So, pre-COVID, we had the option to sit outside and eat lunch, but with the weather getting warmer, I'm assuming that's going to be mandatory for some students. So, are we going to be required to sit outside?
That is coming up. and it depends on the school building. At the high school level, people will not need to be outside, but the weather's getting nicer, and when people can, we want them to be outside as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Good question. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into the particulars of the plan that I feel a responsibility to be talking about with the community. What's changed? Things have continued to change. So just after the holiday, we had this incredible spike that everybody knows about. And we published information about trying to come back full in person, but I was really open about the challenges we had. One of them was a picture of a classroom. We talked about transportation, we talked about lunches, we talked about a lot of things. I just want to explain to people what's changed since then. I've already mentioned the trajectory of the virus, the vaccines. That's been good news. Other things that have happened are that the Department of Education changed the transportation guidance and allowed additional students on school buses. In order to follow the old guidance that we had back 4 weeks ago, we would have had to hire and find the equipment for twice as many buses. In actuality, every system in Massachusetts would have done that, and there just aren't enough buses or drivers to have ever pulled that off. So that was a big gap. One of the things that has changed that has made this possible, where 4 weeks ago this was not possible. Another thing that has changed more locally is that the classroom layouts. If you saw that picture earlier, that picture that we had included 2 6-foot areas designated as teacher spaces or teacher areas or alleys in classrooms. We've cut that down to 1. That has allowed for additional desks to be added to classrooms. Previously, if you go back to September, we were wondering if we would be open at all. Those 2 6-foot areas were used as transitional spaces, teaching spaces, and barrier spaces. By eliminating that from 2 to 1 has added the room and added the space in a lot of rooms, which we can do. It's still within the guidelines. It still provides the space that's required and needed. And doing that has enabled for additional desks. Also, additional furnishings have been removed, while additional desks obviously have been added. So that's something that's changed. The other thing that's changed is the available federal money. Previously and today, if the students coming back from our fully virtual experiences were to come back, we don't have the room to accommodate them. This money allows us to hire for additional staffing to create additional sections for them. If a student is fully virtual right now, they're going to have to change teachers regardless to come back full time. So those, rather than creating lotteries and redistributing students that are currently in seats, we would be able to keep people with their teachers that they currently have in the hybrid model and hire additional staff to perhaps even create multi-age level groups. So if you have a collection of small number of first graders and second graders that decide to come out of virtual, they could be in the same classroom learning together. And that would be the program that they would be offered. The money didn't exist in the regular operational budget to do that before these federal grants were made available to us just after the holidays and into February. So that's another thing that's changed. It's also made it possible to purchase the additional furniture we need and the additional tents we need, or the tents that we need. And I'll talk about the tents later in some of the flexible and outdoor spaces and spaces we'll need for mask breaks, snacks, or lunches, and just multiple use areas. So just in terms of the additional furniture, people would ask, well, why do we need additional furniture? And it's because we need classroom furniture and lunch furniture because the students are going to be in both places. In terms of the cleaning and operation, we can't just be moving furniture throughout the day. So additional furniture is certainly needed. The at the secondary level, mostly at the high school. We've also had to move a number of classrooms around, or plan to move them around for scheduled classes. For example, if our science rooms are bigger than our English rooms, and I'm just using this as an example, if you had a large number, if you had 28 kids in an English class, you could have the English class in a science room, and accommodate that larger need. So all of the larger spaces, library, seminar room, all of those spaces are being used to the extent, maximize their use, along with needing to make not program changes for kids to pull this off, but where that program takes place in terms of physical spaces at the high school. So those are things that have changed since I sent that letter out about a month ago, talking about how we were making an effort in this direction, but that I outlined what those challenges are. And I just wanted to take a moment to explain people what's changed since then, because the only thing that stayed the same is that things keep changing with this pandemic. Could I have the next slide? Thank you. So it's a good spot for me to talk about positions that have been recently posted for a full return. Part of these dates for in these weeks to come include us ramping up to be ready for this. Our faculty and staff are going to be pivoting again. We're all tired of the word pivot. We need some additional support. The custodians for these more frequent and larger lunch shifts and lunch areas, lunch and recess paraprofessionals, instructional paraprofessionals, and multi-grade classroom teacher or teachers, depending on the flow. There are some spaces for kids that could return from virtual. There are not spaces everywhere. And the spaces that we do have, when they fill up, we would have to also move to this. So we need to really be nimble and flexible to be able to do this. And so one of the things I want to highlight to people is, if this type of work sounds interesting to you, we'd love to see your application, and it will be given full consideration, because we want to get people in place and the right people to provide this safe and meaningful experience for the kids. Can I have the next one, please? So I've got a list of some important information that I want to cover with people. Again, all social distancing standards that we all know very, very well are going to be in place. Masks will be required. Hygiene practices will continue. I'm going to say this one twice because it continues to be really important. Everyone should stay home when not feeling well. I want people really not to stress as we do this, but I don't want them to relax from following the rules that we have to follow to keep everybody safe. So everyone, when you don't feel well, we still need people to stay at home. And additionally, all of the quarantine procedures that we unfortunately know all about will continue to be followed, because we're going to continue to follow the rules. K-4 students will no longer have live streaming when we come back full in person. And I just want to spend a second on this and give a little bit of the why. We could talk, at length about this and the next couple of bullets. I think that there's obviously a diminished value in live streaming compared to being there. Everyone would agree on that. And I think it's most significant at the earliest levels, when you've got 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds live streaming. What they're getting from that experience is not anything compared to what our high school students are getting from that experience. Still better to have it than not have it. And our teachers are going to have rooms with 25 on average kindergarten through 4th graders that we want them to be flexible with and give their full attention to, which they will with their creative energy. But when it's a beautiful day and they can learn how to read under an oak tree outside, we want them to be able to do that and for those 25 students, because that's a better school experience for them. And you can't do that and live stream that. You can't do math facts with chalk on the tennis court outside the old tennis court outside the Beaver Brook outdoors on a beautiful day and live stream it. That's the why between in K-4. In 5 through 12, the plan is to continue the live stream on a limited and really thoughtful and responsible basis for medically fragile, for people with medically fragile household students or situations, and for students designated by administration as needed. We need to have this go through parents who make this decision for their children with administration. It can't just be for some of our older students. They come one day and they watch a video feed the next day, because that's not what's best for them. So the goal here, 5 through 12, is to create a window into the 5 through 12 classrooms, so that people can stay connected who can't otherwise be there. Additionally, classes held in smaller classrooms, this is a repeat, will be in larger classrooms.
Peter, it's Chris.
Yes.
Can I ask you a quick question based on this slide really quick? I just want to clarify, just help me clarify the second bullet there about 5 through 12 and medically fragile households. I mean, does that students designated, I guess it would fall under, does that include those who have, I mean, you sent out an announcement today, a high schooler tested positive. Does that include somebody who's tested positive and can't be in, or somebody in quarantine that can't be in as well? Like, would they be able to be streaming during that time and that would be okay?
This would also include people who are quarantined.
Okay.
But the umbrella medically fragile households, means that if you've got a student or a member of the household who had to leave, who has treatments for an illness coming up, and they can't be sick, they'd be added to that list, in a thoughtful way. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that being put under quarantine by our Board of Health qualifies as well.
Right. And this is different than live streaming. If you had for example, at the elementary level, if you had an entire classroom that was quarantined all at once, because that's how those classrooms have been quarantined from time to time, the teacher could provide a remote instruction for those students while that whole group was remote. But that's different than live streaming. We're gonna call that a remote experience for those people during that period of time.
And Peter, will you be explaining at some point, same question on that second bullet, will it come up later in the presentation about how the focus will be on the in-class students, and that the at-home students will more than likely just be listening in, they won't really be engaging?
That's well put. That's the way to say it.
Okay.
So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's clear that even though the live streaming will be available for those students, that it will definitely have more of a focus on the in-class students. At-home students, it's more, I think from what I understand, more like a fly on the wall, listening in and observing the lesson, but not engaging. Unless the teacher chooses to do that.
We're going to, there'll be checks for understanding.
Yeah.
During the lesson, but the focus really will need to be on the people in the room and moving things forward for everybody.
And then my second question on that, we said that it was for students, limited basis, medically fragile households, quarantine students designated by the administration. Will there be a process? I don't want to call it a screening process, but we're encouraging people to stay home when they're not feeling well. But we also want to make sure that that kids are coming to school and not waking up late and deciding to stay home. Is there a process in place to make sure that kids who are hybrid are coming to school?
So they're going to have to, or they if they're not on this list, they're required to be at school. And it's not this stream for 5 through 12 is not meant for someone who's out for a couple of days. That's going to be handled the traditional way. This is for someone who has a reason that's considered. So, you know, all of these plans since the beginning of COVID have been the blunt instruments and one size fits all. And so it's been very hard to meet the needs of one size fits all. And this is an effort. And I appreciate the educators that we're working with, and that this is something that we're going to be able to afford to Abington's kids. But we need to be really thoughtful and responsible about it, and make sure it's, you know, need based, so that it's a benefit to the people that have that window into the classroom. Otherwise, it becomes something else, and it's not a benefit. We want them in school.
Peter, the other piece maybe we could mention is in K through 4, if a child is quarantined, it would most likely be just like people are used to the green cohort was quarantined or the wave was quarantined, it would be the entire class, and the teacher would be quarantined should somebody be a positive. So that would basically, the quarantine would look like maybe the teacher's teaching to the kids who are at home because he or she may also be home. So that was part of, people might be wondering about that.
Yep, thank you. If an entire elementary classroom is quarantined and the teacher's healthy and well, then the teacher would be able to teach that class remotely during that time period, so that class stays going.
One other thing, sorry, it's just, and maybe you've said this or you'll get to this, but anybody who's currently in remote pathway, like who has a remote teacher, can choose to stay in that remote pathway with that remote teacher.
Great point. Gotten that question quite a bit already from the community. If you are remote now, fully remote, you can stay remote. And later in the presentation, you'll see that those students will be now on a 5-day regular schedule. That's an important point to make. And I think there was something in the chat that Lisa was looking to be unmuted also.
I got unmuted, thanks.
And Peter, just off what Jackie just asked too, in the same vein, if somebody who's currently hybrid and felt their parents or they felt comfortable going in 2 days a week, but not 5, I believe they're allowed to enter the virtual academy at this point, correct?
Right. You can always go virtual, but we don't want people moving back and forth. It's not healthy for the kids. So there may be a gap in terms of getting you that, placement, and it's not to be done to be detrimental or a delay to people. But there are natural breaks that make sense to move back and forth. And so if someone just, prior to this does not want to be a part of this and they want to go virtual, we'll accommodate them before this happens. So to back a little bit to what Jackie was saying, there will be a process for this published so that the parents know if they want to make changes, they can.
Thank you.
I really appreciate these questions because, we want to get the information out there. So, okay. Arrival and dismissal to school buildings will be slow, guys. Again, please, don't stress. We're not going to leave students unattended. We don't shut off the lights and go home and leave, 7 and 8-year-olds waiting out front. If we'll hang on to them. And if we've got large numbers of people late to school because there's a lot of traffic, then we know that and we'll adjust that. If everybody shows up on time and, you're late, you're gonna be marked late. But as we open, as we adjust to this, accommodations will be made for people to account for that. New bus routes are coming. It's like the start of a whole new school year. New tags are coming, and there's a place in heaven for the people that are working on our bus routes and our bus tags. Unfortunately, we're going to be limited to the number of people that we can add. So there will be a wait list, and that'll be accommodated depending on available seats. So I'll talk about tents for a second. I don't want our faculty and staff that are watching to feel like, oh, great, now I'm going to be teaching in a tent. You're not. You're going to have all of the resources that the school building provides, but you will be able to use those tented areas as it suits you. To Samuel's point, the weather's getting nicer. We want to go outside. Are we going to be forced to go outside? You're not. There's one situation in the district that comes up later where people are going to need to be outside to eat lunch just because of physical spaces. I'll get there. But these are meant as for mask breaks. They're meant for lunches. They're meant for flexible teaching spaces, activity areas. And in some instances, we wouldn't be able to do this without these tented areas. So can I have the next slide?
Mr. Schaefer, I have another question.
I'm ready.
Okay, so eventually, probably within the next year, masks are probably not going to be mandatory, but people obviously have the choice not to take the vaccine. So are like students in particular, are they going to be forced to wear masks in school if they don't take the vaccine?
Everyone's going to have to wear a mask until the departments of public health, CDC, governor, whomever say it's okay to take masks off.
Okay, so even when they take the vaccine.
Yep.
Okay.
People are required to wear it. So, I mean, not only do we have to protect our faculty and our staff and our students, we have a responsibility to protect the community at large. And, we can say a lot of these things with confidence about the safety because there isn't school spread. Well, there hasn't been school spread because people are wearing masks. And if we become these super spreader places and then students go home and infect their families, or our faculty goes home and they infect fragile family members. So, we're not, again, we're going to follow all the rules. We don't want people to stress, but we can't relax from following the rules. Things are going in the right direction because we're following the rules. We don't want to mess that up.
Yeah, that's true. I was only wondering because I heard mixed people saying like, if once you take the vaccine, you won't transmit it to someone, and then other people that are like, no, you still can. So I was just curious.
Yeah, until that standing order changes, masks are required.
Thank you.
So yeah. No, good question. Virtual Academy. Families are going to continue to be allowed to select for the Virtual Academy that we have K through 6 or TECA 7 through 12 for their children. The grades, the TECA is already a 5-day program. The grades K through 6 will be a 5-day program. If a student wishes to return from the Virtual Academy to in-person instruction, again, I just want to mention that they're definitely going to change teachers, but they could end up with someone that we're going to vet, find good people, hire, and they could end up in multi-grade sections depending on the situation. So let me get more specific about lunches and tents and things like that. At the middle high school, the cafeteria, the seminar room, main hallways, the middle school gym, students will be assigned seats, and seats will be at 6 feet apart. Again, there will be outside areas that when the weather is better and nicer or warm enough, people will be able to use at the middle high school and the AEEP and the early ed program. At the Woodsdale, we have some of our biggest space challenges. Students will be assigned to eat lunch in the cafeteria, in the gymnasium, or in the tent. We need to use that tent area for lunches at the Woodsdale because there just isn't space. And so it'll be jackets. It'll be something that, as the weather continues to get warmer, will be hopefully a good thing. It'll be close to the building in case it's raining. Depending on the rainstorm, we're not going to leave kids, out cold and wet. We will take care of the kids, and but we need the distance in that area to be able to remain 6 feet apart. And you got to take your mask off to eat a sandwich. So that's just one of the things we will have to do. The Beaver Brook students will be assigned to eat in the cafeteria or one of the 2 gymnasiums. They'll also be assigned seats and remain 6 feet apart. And there'll be different times that with the Beaver Brook will also have a tent that they can use. The tent will be there all the time to use, but they'll have the flexibility to use it. And also the Frollo has different spaces that can be used with some flexibility. It's a little bit of a hike with little legs, but maybe they can do math facts while they walk to the Frollo and have a cool experience with us. I want to talk a little about questions, input, surveys, and changes. So, early in February, if I had asked everybody, do you want to, we've had some criticism about surveys, and not a lot, but some. So early in February, if we had asked everybody, do you want to come to school, or in the middle of February, or at the end of February, most people would have said yes. And they wouldn't have known any level of detail about what they were getting into. They would have felt stressed and pressured, and they would have gotten really, I think, a false sense of immediate gratification, because we really didn't know what the environment was going to look like. This changed quite a bit. I talked about how it's changed. And it's not that we don't want people's input or to do surveys or to find out what people want. It's really insulting to ask people what they want when you don't even know what they're getting into. And then what good is the data that you get from a family when you say to them in the first week of February, do you want to come back to school? And in the next, that next week in that first week, we had that spike after the holiday. Feelings change the next week, next 2 weeks. It was 4 weeks ago, we were at the highest spike of this virus we've had over this last, awful year. So people change their minds. So you're going to feel like you put them in a corner over something with data that really isn't all that valid. Now that we know the specifics, and as I said, we're going to be communicating more with families and more specifics. And then we're going to communicate with families by building more specifics. And then we're going to create a process for people to make decisions for their families. And we don't have a choice. We have to do our best to accommodate these things with the plan that we have. And so it's actually out of a sense of respect for our families and for the community that we're not asking these shallow, empty surveys where we're getting 90% of the people who are like, let's come back to school, yay. And nobody even knows what it looks like. The skeptic in me thinks that some of these surveys are sheerly political to create a momentum, and they're not really designed to find out what families want to do. And I'm just being honest about that. We're going to continue to pump out more information about the full return, and as I said, to communicate with people how changes are made, the process for that. The last thing I really want to say before I, even open up for more questions, I really appreciate the questions you've given me along the way, is that the why is important here. We've got students that come from so many different types of households. They have so many different types of needs. And what's best for them is to be back in place as much as possible, to have that experience before we leave for the school year. Can't imagine what it would be like to start September and not have some kind of normalcy. Thank goodness we're creating something where we're going to have more people in purpose. We want to create a meaningful experience for our students that's engaging, that's thoughtful, in a way that's safe. That's why we've done this. I know we're going to have a lot of questions. We want to provide people the answers. We're not going anywhere. I would put our record up against answering questions with anybody. I'll stop, and I want to make sure if I've forgotten something or I should clarify something, I'm going to ask our team to please help me.
I have a quick question about teachers who have been vaccinated. It goes to the, we won't have as many teachers who are close contacts anymore. They will not have to quarantine after they have received the second vaccine and a few weeks after that. If they will no longer be considered a close contact. So if a student does have it and a teacher has been fully vaccinated, they would continue teaching their class. They would no longer be a close contact.
I have to check on that. I'm sorry, the only answer I have for you is that we're going to follow the rules, and those rules, continue to change. And as they change, I think people know we publish them for everybody as soon as we find out, because first question we get from families is, why are you doing this to us? So Danielle, it's a great question. Without knowing specifically about that just yet, I'd have to look it up and get back to you, but we'll follow that rule if that's what's published.
Danielle, one of the problems though is that if it's a child that is a close contact, even if the teacher can stay, the rest of the kids, I'm thinking like in a K-4 setting, can't. So that's a problem.
Right. Yeah. I'm just thinking K-4 and then up through the high school too. The high school teachers wouldn't necessarily need to quarantine.
Peter, can you answer the question? I don't know the answer about the buses. You said that we may not be able to put everybody back on, or there's a wait list. I guess I didn't even think of that, but how is that when all the restrictions have been lifted? Like, did we not plan to have enough buses reserved? Like, how come we can't just have people back?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. If you have a spot on a bus now, whether you're green or wave, you're going to have a spot.
No, I think the question.
If you're new to the bus, we're going to put you on as we can.
I guess people might be wondering what's the as you can, only because the old way was you can cram as many kids on a school bus as you want. And it seems like that's what the new regulations are, like that there are no more regulations. You can put as many, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. I'm just saying that I think I read, like you could put 3 to a seat at elementary and 2 to a seat at the high school level. Is that what we used to do, or is that fewer students than how we used to do it?
You have a good question, because it's pretty much what we used to do. Because at the secondary level, two bigger kids to a seat is about what works, and when they're 3 little fannies is fine on those seats. So I would rather put that out there. There are some spaces, but I'd rather put that out there the way that I did than shock people later, because we've got to follow those rules.
Thank you.
Peter, I have a question. Can you talk about what the day is going to look like at especially high school and middle school? I know I'm sure people are wondering, and I don't think we said it in the presentation, I know right now high school is periods 1 through 4 and then 5 through 7 with the bridge block. And I know people have asked me when we go back, will we be 1 through 7? Will it be, can you talk about what the schedule will look like? If there's a rotation and give them.
A great question. I'm gonna defer to our resident high school and middle school experts. Jonathan Bourne, do you mind?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So what high school students and parents are probably familiar with is a Monday, Tuesday schedule. And what in consultation with the AAA makes the most sense is we're gonna do an A day, B day schedule. So our A day is gonna look like a Monday, period 1, 2, 3, 4 will meet. And then a B day will be period 5, bridge block 6, 7. And we will just vary each day A, B for the remainder of the school year.
Hi, Lisa. And at Abington Middle School for grades 7 and 8, the days that are day A for the high school will be day 1s for grades 7 and 8. And the days that are day B will be day 4. It's important for us to match those up so that any shared staff don't run into conflicts. Grade 5 and 6 will stay with a 5-day rotating schedule that they've had previously.
So to clarify, so then if you're doing like a 2-day rotation, so it'll go like 1 week will be like A, B, and then the next week on Monday we'll start B. So each week will look different. So you won't always have the same day on a Monday. It'll alternate, correct?
Correct.
To be clear for people that are, just to put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else I'm just thinking about, which is crazy because we spent hours on this and we've never talked about it, is we'll have to send something out about the half days because we'll be returning to 5-day a week all in instruction, and we will have to have families be able to plan for which days are the half days now where kids will be dismissed. I know, like we talked about, I think a couple of dates that might be coming up that you might be able to say, but it just dawned on me
Good point.
that they used to get hidden in the remote day.
Right.
I have a Facebook question. Someone wants to know how would the switch go from virtual to full time? Like, what would they have to do? Can maybe for high school or middle school, like, do they contact the guidance counselor? Do they contact the principal? How do they?
Yeah, schools are gonna communicate how to do that.
Thank you.
Peter, I got, well, one's a question. One is when Jackie was talking about the buses, just thinking about too, like this, I know what you mean, Jack, like all of a sudden somebody could say, why is it a problem? I mean, you can fit everybody you want. I mean, could it just be a fact that, let's just say, I mean, I don't know, if a bus doesn't go in a neighborhood ever, and then it would want to go into that neighborhood, like that be a problem, trying to add a new neighborhood onto a route out of nowhere?
So I should maybe do a better job of backing up. So like when we start the year, we start with a certain number of buses and we asked everybody if they wanted a bus. And so we don't have extra equipment or we don't hire extra drivers for that. Because that would be irresponsible. Why would you? And so we had the people and the equipment and the budget in place to accommodate that. We may have to bring on additional buses later as we go through this. We've got the money. We could do that if we have to, but it's going to depend. Some routes we're going to be able to put people on right away, and other routes it's going to take a wait list and a time to get that additional equipment, that additional route done, and those additional people in place in order to accommodate those people. If that makes any
And
sense.
this goes back to the traffic part too, is that when the last time we had kids all in person, K-12, we had lots of buses taking kids into Glenowitz Way, and those don't exist right now. So that lies in, like, that's the traffic problem, right? That there's going to be that many more cars, unlike what we've ever probably seen. So that'll all need to kind of work itself out, I guess.
So it's going to be frustrating because, the infrastructure in South Shore communities was never meant for the traffic we have right now, ever. And we're going to be we're going to put a lot more people all at once in different places. So just be prepared that I hope really bad traffic is our big problem.
Mhm.
I think it will be, knock on wood. I don't want to jinx us. But just be prepared for really bad traffic as students come and leave school. And the different buildings have different plans for what that arrival and that dismissal will be like. Schools are going to be communicating that to their parents depending on the school building.
Peter, can I ask one more? So it's a question about multi-grade classrooms. So that term was something I never heard until 2 weeks ago, I think. So for people that aren't familiar, just I guess I have one question. Maybe you could explain it. I mean, I think it is what it sounds like, but let's say you have a first and a second grade that's multi-grade. But first you have, I don't know, 10 first graders, 10 second graders with one teacher. Are they taught their first and second grade curriculum separately? I guess, could you explain that possibly?
They are each taught at their grade level, and it's differentiated to meet the needs of the grades.
Peter, can we go back to the bus for a second? So would they contact the superintendent's office to talk to Felicia or go to each principal? How do they try to get on the wait list or?
We will set up a process for that.
Okay, thank you.
We go back to Chris's question only because just to ease some minds, if you are someone who is a virtual student or family and you're considering coming back and you're worried that you may be in an what are we calling it, multi-level classroom, one of the glass half full is that at the elementary level, for both like ELA and math, we have like the power standards, we call them, that spiral, K to 5 or K to 6. So in Chris, your example of like the 10 and 10 first grade and second grade, that teacher would probably teach to the power standards in ELA and the power standards in math that sort of are lucky for us. There's some difference obviously between first and second grade, but there's some commonality too. So that I don't know that would work in any other example other than elementary example, but that's a benefit of that.
Okay.
Multi-age classrooms, or combining of two grades together is something that historically was done years ago quite a bit, and it's not done that often anymore, but it's not unheard of.
Peter, can we go back to the absence from, I guess, 7 through 12? So if you are absent for a couple of days and then you go to the doctor, you find out you're sick and you're going to be out longer. Did we actually, I forget now with negotiations, did we specifically state like you have 3 days, if you're out for 3 days, then you can go on live streaming, or how does that work?
We didn't put an exact day on it, but again, the 1, 2, or 3 day absences is not what this is for. It's for those longer term absences to be a more consistent school experience.
And it's the administration, it sounded like it was the administration decision at each building, right?
With each individual family, we want to make sure we're communicating and talking to our parents about what's best for our kids. We don't want it to be, I am a high school student and I'm a junior or senior, and today is going to be a virtual day for me and tomorrow is going to be an in-person day for me.
Also too, like we spent hours and hours on this topic in negotiations, and I just think it's important to kind of note that it's not so building specific that like if Mr. McCurtain decides it's going to look this way and Mr. Basta decides it's going to look this way, there's pretty like I think that we would all agree there's consistency around everyone's understanding of who makes that list, and so it's not really just like, I don't want people to think that depending on which building you attend that you may or may not get on the list. It's kind of, we've spent lots of time defining that.
I wish I had more questions. We've had a couple of meetings and I think we've asked every one of them. So I
I
wish.
actually have one more quick question. For students who stay fully remote, and as we bring back the other kids in full, will the fully remote kids still get specials?
I'm going to ask our principals to help me with that. The answer is yes. I don't know how it's going to look without checking with them.
Okay.
To some degree, but I think it may depend on subject area and it may depend on availability. Do any of the principals want to take a shot at that, or?
Hi, Danielle.
Go ahead.
The fully remote students I can speak to 5 through 8, but I believe this may be the case at all levels. Their availability of their specials won't change. So they won't lose anything based on this. They'll just gain that Wednesday as an instructional day that right now is a asynchronous day.
I want to do a good job of thanking everyone, but when I say everyone, I mean everyone. We've had school committee members who, when they decided to be on the school committee, didn't know we were going to have a pandemic, who have put, all of them have put hours upon hours upon hours, probably at our meetings, and then, tossing and turning on their own time about all of these things. In particular, I want to thank Wendy and Jackie for their work with this most recent evolution that we have here. I want to thank the members of our administrative team, and I tell them all the time. I either apologize to them that some of the things and challenges we've had to face, or I tell them how much I appreciate that this is our team, and that's how I end that's how they know meetings are ending, because that's what I say at the end of every meeting. Our faculty and our staff and our parents, this has been awful, guys. It was a year ago. I was walking my dog and I was talking to Marty Golightly about an exposure that took place in Abington, not in Abington, but in a school building that one of our parents worked in, and we really shut down to clean the building where those kids went to school, and to give it time to see if the people in that family, the kids, got sick from COVID, and we were going to come right back to school, and we haven't been back full in person since. And it was like a year ago, maybe today or tomorrow. So, I mean, our faculty and our staff and our parents, I don't know how you do this with little kids at home. It's tough, and the stress, and the teachers that have had to stand on their heads, and the staff that have stand on their heads to take care of people. I want to thank them. And most importantly, I want to get back to the why. I want to thank our students, because you're the reason we did all this, even though this has been painful, and most painful for all of you. You're why we have done this, and it's not been what we've wanted for you. And this next phase is going to be messy, and it won't be what we want for you. But I do believe it's the best that we can do in a bad circumstance to take care of what's most important to us as a community. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Peter.
I just want to add to what Peter said, only because we talked a lot about this in our other multi-meetings. It's just that there were many ways that this could have been done. And I think that I personally value this team in particular, because as I look at the boxes of the people who I've spent hours with, we don't all agree. We don't all see it the same way. And but one thing that we had in common the entire time was that we really wanted a good experience for kids, but we wanted to do it in a way that we could preserve relationships when we come out of this awfulness, that we can look at each other, parents, school committee, staff, admin, and just feel good as a town that we made it out and that we're all still friendly, and that we survived. So I just am echoing what you said, and particularly to the administrators. I think that they have the hardest job. They hear it from all sides, parents, school committee members, I'm sure from Peter. And ultimately it's them that has to do the magic of transforming their building to meet whatever it is that we're saying must happen next. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Nicely said, Jackie.
Absolutely. Gave me
Yeah.
a little teary-eyed, actually. I have one more question before I ask the big question. Peter, I just had somebody ask me, will remote, where they'll no longer be remote, how will the band lessons go?
So it depends on the grade level. It depends on the students, and I know that the music department is working to stay within the rules, because there are rules around a musical instrument and singing. I'd rather have them roll that out for people specifically. We have a concern that if we don't do those things, that our students that play instruments, their program is going to really, continue to wither, because we need that pipeline of kids playing instruments coming to the high school. The weather helps, the tents help, the distancing will help. But I'm gonna rather than answer that specifically and get it wrong, I'm gonna defer to have that person. Let's go straight to the music department and get that, depending on grade level and accommodations that are going to be made.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
When-
So, anyone else have questions? Sorry, Peter. No one else? So at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the Abington Public Schools full in-person return dates for pre-kindergarten through 8th grade to start on April 5th, and the grades 9 through 12 to start on April 12th. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Yay.
Feel a little relief here. Thank you, everybody. So to end the night, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn and not return to open session for the purpose of going into executive session to discuss collective and non-collective bargaining strategies, with the Abington Education Association and other individual employee groups by roll call vote.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And
All in
yes.
favor?
Yes.
So
Yes.
by individual, just we want to make sure we see
Yes.
everybody's.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's it, everyone. Thank you so much. Our next meeting will be on March 23rd it's a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.